Welcome. I'm Pastor Craig Miller. Let us open up with a word of prayer. Dear God, change is never easy, for it causes us to look at our lives in a new light. Give us the courage to see what you see. Help us to honestly look for the ways we need to change and for the new actions we need to embrace. Forgive us for our wrongdoings and give us the strength to forgive those who have wronged us. Amen. Today we're continuing our series on transformation, and we're looking at number 3, shed it. As we started talking about transformation, we looked at step 1, accept it. We had to have a willingness to realize that we need to make a change in our life. And we learned about the idea of telling a new story. There was the stories of agency, which is a me story, which means I overcame something. Belonging stories, which are the we stories, we survived. And cause stories, the these stories, we changed the worlds. The idea behind these is that in order for transformation to happen, we have to have a willingness to start a new story. Then we learned about step 2, market. And we learned about the idea of rituals, how in biblical times and in other stories that we see, that transformation starts with a realization that we need to mark the beginning of this new journey. And then we learned about the importance of rituals. If you get lost, you will know the way home. When we begin patterns of life, especially in terms of prayer or biblical reflection or worship, it gives us a way to return home, to become the people that we are called to be. Well, today we're going to take a look at step 3, shed it. In other words, in order to move forward, we have to be willing to let go. We have to be willing to let go of old ways of doing things and be willing to embrace something that is new in our life. Now, in our biblical story, we've been taking a look at the life of Joseph. And as we followed his story, we found that he was deemed the favorite son by his father. He was given the fancy coat, but his brothers were jealous and they threw him in a pit. And then they sold him to become a slave. He ended up in Potiphar's house. And then he had to leave there because of a scandal. And then he ended up in jail. And that's where we find Joseph stuck in jail, but being in charge of everything because the Lord favored him. Our story then turns to Pharaoh. And let's see what happened that would begin a dramatic series of events in Joseph's life that started first what was happening in the life of the Pharaoh. Let us read Genesis 41, verses 1 through 8. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, and there came out of the Nile 7 sleek and fat cows, and they grazed in the reed grass. Then 7 other cows, ugly and thin, came out of the Nile after them, and stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and thin cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. And Pharaoh awoke. Then he fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, were growing on one stalk. Then 7 ears, thin and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Pharaoh awoke, and it was a dream. In the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to the Pharaoh. Here we see that the Pharaoh knew trouble was coming. He didn't know exactly what it was, but he had an idea from his dream that change was coming, but he did not know where to turn or where to go in his life. He went to the old ways. He went to the magicians of the Egyptians. They had no answer for him. And so the Pharaoh was in a quandary. He was stuck in his life. Bruce Feiler in Life is in the Transitions talks about this feeling that we have when we're stuck in the middle. It's called the messy middle because it's messy. It's disorienting, disheartening, liberating for some, infuriating for others. Habits we've been attached to forever collapse. Identities we've cultivated for years melt away. Personal stories we thought we'd be telling for a lifetime come to an abrupt end. Now what? Feiler was alluding to the transitions that happen to our life, and when we are in the midst of the transitions, many times we do not know how to turn or what to do. One way to talk about transitions is to look at life stages. As we move from childhood to adolescence, from adolescence to young adulthood, to middle age, the new old, and the old, at each stage of life, there are transitions that we go through. You may wonder, well, what is the new old and the old? Well, the new old is when people retire and they're still healthy enough to do many activities and be self-determined in terms of what they want to do. The old is when a person becomes completely dependent on others for their care. And so at each one of these transitions, we have changes that go in our life. Now, in the book, Life is in the Transitions, Feiler says that these life stages are all messed up, that we may be going through many of these different stages at different times in our lives, and that these transitions are happening faster and faster for people. John Wesley even remarked on this phenomena. He said, "When I was young, I was sure of everything. In a few years, having been mistaken 1,000 times, I was not half so sure of most things as I was before. At present, I'm hardly sure of anything but what God has revealed to me." I think that's a great quote in terms of what happens throughout life, that although we may think we know, in fact, we are uncertain. And as a result, we question our life decisions and where we are going in the future. Feiler says this, "The messy middle is all about what happens when we're in the state of in-between. It involves a complicated alchemy of giving up old ways and experimenting with new ones, moving beyond what's past and beginning to define what's coming. In butterfly speak, it's cocooning. In hero speak, it's getting lost." So how do we move out of that messy middle? Feiler makes an interesting observation. He says that the world of gaming gives us some clues as to how we move out of the messy middle and make sense of life and give ourselves a new start. Now, I happen to love to play video games. As you can see on the screen, I have played Civilization. Animal Crossing is the newest game that's come out. And in the background, you'll see a game called Fortnite, all of them wildly popular. And what's interesting to note is that gaming is the most popular form of entertainment in our world. We've gone a long way from Pong to the type of video games that are available right now. In fact, video games make much more money than the movies or any other type of entertainment. And especially in this time of the pandemic, gaming has exploded even more. So what can we learn about the different types of games and how we can employ those ideas to move forward in our own lives? The first is the sandbox. Put a pile of Legos in front of a kid and watch what happens. They'll pick up the blocks and start snapping them together in different combinations to make airplanes, cars, even walls, even whole cities if they have enough Lego blocks to work with. And that is the idea of the sandbox. You have strict boundaries and radical freedom within. In other words, you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want with whatever tools you have around yourself. So the sandbox is an interesting concept for us to think about. It means taking a look at the assets that we have, the people we know, the financial resources we have, the place that we are living, the community in which we live, and to say, out of all those things that are given, what can I do that is new? How can I take those things and use them in a new way? And that would be the SANDBOX. The second way is the quest, going on a journey and having a map which will take you to a particular location and place. The goal of achieving a certain end and earning a specific reward. I mean, wouldn't you love to be in that van right now? Maybe back in the 60s or 70s, where you could get on the road and go anywhere you wanted to. Maybe some of you even did that. Maybe you would long to do that now. In fact, RV sales are the number one product that's being sold right now in terms of the consumer, because people figure they can buy an RV or a camper, go anywhere they want, and you don't have to worry about cleaning it, because that's also where they are living. So that idea of the quest, the idea of going on a journey, sometimes not knowing the exact destination, but the journey itself being a way that you are learning and experiencing life. The third is the cycle. Now, I don't know if you've ever played Pac-Man or Mario games, but in those particular games, you move from one level to the next. Once you master one particular part of the map, you go on to the next one, from one world to the next, as you're building your skills and your knowledge. So the cycle is a series of loops in which the goal is to perform better each time. In many ways, it's like a roller coaster. And many times in our lives, we feel like we're on a roller coaster. We don't know where the next loop is going to turn or which direction the coaster is going to go. But because it is on the rail, we do have a sense of hope that we are safe. And in the end, we will be able to return back to our home, to our previous destination. And so that is the cycle. In many ways, that's the way that we live life as well. We cycle through one part of life to the next. Now, the biblical narrative is filled with such stories. We had Abraham who left Ur. We had Moses who crossed the Red Sea and then was in the desert with the Israelites. We had Mary, the mother of Jesus, who left Bethlehem to see Elizabeth when both Mary and Elizabeth were pregnant. We have Jesus who went into the desert and Saul who got on the road to Damascus. All of them had to step into the unknown, not knowing what the results would be, but knowing they needed to start a new journey. This week, many of the players of the NBA had a similar experience. If you haven't been following what's been happening with basketball, for about the last 6 weeks, they have been in a bubble. They've been in Orlando, and they were told to leave their families behind, to be tested before they went inside the bubble, and they could only interact with fellow players, the coaches, and the staff. People would come in to cook food for them, but that was it. And so they've been playing basketball under this bubble in which they're in this confined area. It's in Disney World, but you only can go so far. And it's been quite an experiment. One of the things that they figured out is that this kept them from getting the COVID-19. Virtually none of the players have come down with it since they got in the bubble. So as a result, they've been able to play their games. They finished their first round of games, and now they are in the playoffs. So on Wednesday, the Milwaukee Bucks, who have the best record and one of the favorites to win the NBA championship, they found themselves in the middle. Last Sunday, another police shooting led to protests and riots in the streets. And this time it was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, less than 40 miles away from where they normally play their games. So as they were getting ready to play their playoff game against the Orlando Magic, they came to a conclusion. they just couldn't play. They had to make a stand for social justice. And so they packed their bags and they walked off the court. Well, this was a great shock because no one knew they were going to do this, not even the coaches, nor the team that was going to play them. They figured that they were just going to forfeit the game, let Orlando Magic say that they won the game, and just see what would happen after that. They were in the middle. They didn't know what the results of their actions would be. Well, soon the Orlando Magic heard about it, and they too said that they weren't going to play. And then the other teams that were going to play that night said, no, we're not going to play either. We're going to stand with the Milwaukee Bucks, and we're also going to take a stand for social justice. By the time the players were talking to each other, remember, they're all in a bubble. They're all able to interact with each other. They're not living in different cities. They're all under this one place, sort of an NBA monastery, if you will. And so as a result, they were able to interact with each other in a very different way than they were able to do so in the past. By the end of Wednesday night, there was a question as to whether the season would even continue. They were in the middle. They were questioning everything. They were willing to give up the game they loved because of the way that they felt, and they felt they needed to act in this day and time. So what happened? The next day they met with the union representatives, with the owners of the NBA teams, and talked to others to see what they could do to move forward. So they made some definite decisions. They decided that all NBA stadiums would be offered as polling places for the upcoming election. The owners agreed to invest more money in the communities where the teams were located for social change. And they would continue to talk and dream. Many people were affected this beyond the NBA players. Baseball shut down. The hockey teams shut down as well. Even a tennis match was canceled as others joined with the NBA players to take a stand for what they believed in. But it wouldn't have started if they hadn't made that decision to change, to shed what was old in order to embrace something that is new. Transformation begins when we accept it, when we accept the need for transformation, when we mark it, when we create a way to say this is the beginning, and when we shed it, when we're willing to give up the old in order to discover the new, to take the next step. Let us close with this word of prayer. May the Lord, mighty Lord, bless and keep you forever. Grant us peace, perfect peace, courage in every endeavor. Lift your eyes and see his face, and his grace forever. May the Lord, mighty Lord, bless and keep you forever. Let us join together, and God will be with you till we meet again. Amen.